Good evening and welcome back to Co-Discussions with Carmen and Jeannie. Jeannie, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well. It is a Thursday night and it's not Monday, so it's great.
That is exactly right, yes. And I'm doing very well because this is my second week with summer break from school, and so loving life right now. So we have a very special guest tonight. Sarah Palmer is with us. And so Sarah, if you'll just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I am Sarah Palmer, aka Pinup Palmer, aka Gwengoolie, for those who know me on that area. I am a horror lover. I've been since I was a kid. I have my own YouTube channel that's very dedicated to vintage, pink, and spooky. I'm on a TV show on MeTV as a horror guest host, or I don't know, a sidekick host on the Svengoolie show for those who are a fan of horror hosting and horror comedy to make fun of it, like Mystery Science Theater or Elvira. And I love everything vintage tiki. I work at Universal Studios where horror was made. I play the Bride of Frankenstein. And yeah, my life is literally just Halloween 24/7 every day.
That is amazing and awesome.
That's
Absolutely. Fun. Yeah, we get to enjoy, I guess, Halloween through October and sometimes September as well. I kind of start decorating early. We did an event, let's see, was it 2 years ago, halfway to Halloween in May, and so that was a lot of fun. So
I feel like Halloween's just creeping up every month, just a little bit. Halloween in January.
Yeah, oh, I know. The decorations in stores are coming out so much earlier now than ever.
I've already seen some, I think at Michael's or Joann's.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Got the fever.
Yes. and if I was going to say, I always have the fever for that kind of stuff. Same. So tell us your work at Universal, Bride of Frankenstein, and just some of the other things that you do there. And
so I started working at Universal when I was 18.
Okay.
I am now 32. So I've given Universal Studios like pretty much all of my 20s, my youth.
Yeah.
And
right.
Yeah. And I first started, the first things I did there was Halloween Horror Nights. So it's this Halloween event where they scare you and they take you through mazes and stuff. And I liked it so much. I was like, what else do you guys got? They're like, oh, we got a thing called Grinchmas, which is a event that's dedicated to the Jim Carrey version of the Grinch from Dr. Seuss's. Okay. And I was like, sure, I'll audition for that. Got that. And then I guess I got the fever for working at Universal Studios. So I wanted to work there full time. So I auditioned for everything that I could. And eventually wound up as a Helen in Waterworld as the stunt show, Marilyn Monroe, Fiona, did Grinchmas again, did Halloween Horror Nights again, and found my way through the years to finally the Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, wow.
And I got rid of all the other characters. I'm done because I'm slowly starting to step away from Universal.
Okay.
But I knew I wanted to keep one character, and it was the bride. I mean, who doesn't want to just hiss at people all day?
Yes.
Silent characters are the best. So I love playing her, and she's probably one of my favorite characters ever. It's kind of awesome to play a Universal character too, because all the other characters are just kind of rented out. Like Marilyn never worked for Universal. We like to say she was a Fox girl. She was an MGM girl. That never happened. But to finally play a character that's like Universal made is really cool, really neat, nostalgic.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeannie,
it's been a ride.
Yeah, Jeannie, what questions do you have?
Well, talking about Universal, and I've been to the Florida Universal Horror Nights, the Halloween and all that kind of thing. It's spectacular because it speaks to people who like that genre. Mm-hmm. So, and you talked about how you started basically at a young age of 18 into that world. So what kind of other things has drawn you to horror as a genre, not just working at Universal and being in that thing, but before that, what was so spectacular? And you talk about how the pinup, every time Pinup Palmer, when I first heard the name automatically, and then I guess it's just because I've been hooked on tattoos for years, I think of pinup models, like Betty Boop and I think Ella Page. Yeah, Ella Page and all those. So what kind of sprung on the train of horror for you at an early age, not just at Universal, but before that?
I think I always say this, but there's something about 90s kids growing up, and I really blame commercials and markets really pushing the Halloween, because I think at that point, like, big markets saw Halloween as all of a sudden lucrative in money.
Yeah.
That they never did before. It was just Christmas. So they always dedicated Christmas commercials and stuff. And then all of a sudden it switched. And Halloween became a huge market, especially in candy. Candy started making personalized Halloween commercials. And I don't know, there was something about the 90s that just, there was so much television, so much movies, so much resurgence for kids, specifically targeted to kids as Halloween. So we kind of grew up on like monsters, like Goosebumps and Our Real Monsters and Are You Afraid of the Dark? And so I blame a lot of our childhood television shows kind of almost grooming us to be Halloween nerds. So we were accustomed to it early.
Yeah.
And honestly, decorating the house for Halloween with my mom is probably some of the most precious times I've ever had. So I was always excited to go to Party City or something just to gather all the stuff and put up the spider webs out in the outside. We were the most decorated house on the block, and it was
that's cool.
It holds a very special place in my heart. But when you mix in vintage with that, vintage came first and then Halloween came after. And if you notice in some of the vintage community, there's things called psychobillies and rockabilly, which is more of the gothic kind of side. And you have to realize where it kind of stems from is because the 1950s, just like the 1990s, pushed a lot of Halloween stuff. We had the Munsters, we had Bewitched, we had the Addams Family. So it was kind of like that base. So you have now the vintage time and the vintage look with these monster type characters. We hadn't really seen that, and I would say until the 90s started again, and then it pushed it. So I think the horror and pinup and women and makeup and glamour and monsters have always been a thing together. I think now people are just finding a way to mix the two. And I certainly have. I was like, you know what? Why don't we do it? Why can't Frankenstein be pink? What's so wrong with that?
Yes.
So yeah. I don't.
Yeah, that you make a really good point, because like when you think of Creature from the Black Lagoon, you see that iconic picture of I forget her name off the top of my head. Yes. And just with her, white bathing suit. And then I've seen like Gillian Anderson. Yeah, Gillian Anderson did a photo shoot with the monster, and she had on this like really cool red dress, and it's like that. It's very iconic, very pinup like. Yeah.
Yeah, monsters and pinup girls, like Hammer films, and those have always really gone together, and it's just such a beautiful blend. And I just love that people are catching on to it now and going, oh, we should push this. This is totally a thing. Yeah, exactly. If Julie Adams in Creature of the Black Lagoon isn't the most pinup thing I've ever seen in my life. They designed that swimsuit to make her look good. Like they padded her breasts, they padded her butt. They hyped up the bathing suit, which was actually really risky at the time.
Oh, wow.
Kind of showing her in a certain light, because technically out of all maybe the classic monster stories, I would say Creature is the biggest love story. And not to mention Marilyn Monroe in 7-Year Itch, the famous scene where she's in the white dress. The movie that she's coming out of is Creature of the Black Lagoon. So they've always mixed. So I was like, oh, I played Marilyn and I like monsters. That's same vibes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I was trying to think. All right, Jeannie, what other questions? I'm looking at my list of things.
Well, when she's talking about the 50s version, like with Munsters and Addams Family and all those things, and then the trend picking back up in the 90s. I think part of the thing about the 50s is with the monsters, everybody fell in love with them because to me, it was like, hey, they're humanizing them
Totally.
to the world. And then, and you were bringing up the 90s, and oh yeah, I'm going to date myself because you basically are the same age as my niece. So I was help raising her in the 90s. So it's just, but the one thing that popped in my head was the Backstreet Boys, the monster, the song that they did where they're dressed up in the outfit. Yeah, and those kinds of things. And I'm like, I never thought about how they did that, but there was a lot of other things that the commercialized and everything started pushing towards the trend of Halloween again. And the monsters and
marketing Halloween.
Yeah, marketing Halloween. And I never even dawned on me that was when it started picking back up again. And I can see why.
I think one of the main catalysts for that, if I'm correct, I don't know the exact date, but I think one of the first people to do that or capitalize on Halloween as a lucrative money product was the beer companies when they signed on Elvira to do Coors Light ads. Because, they had beer ads only for Super Bowl. That's when they pushed it. Yeah. But they were like, is Halloween an adult now kind of, is it for parties? Is Halloween now the day? And they started noticing college kids were getting just as drunk on Halloween. And all of a sudden, now this icon, this woman to push this, and it worked. It worked. Everybody remembers those commercials with her and Coors Light, and she's with all the monsters and stuff.
Yes.
Her big billboards that were at the grocery store. They made so much money on her. It was insane. And I think other companies saw that and they went, okay, I think we need to get on this trend. What do we do?
Yeah. Thinking about it, in my opinion, like you're bringing it up, Elvira to me would be the perfect pinup model for Halloween.
She's totally pinup.
Yeah, she is. I mean, it's like she was designed that way to see, not her specifically, but she designed herself that way when she became the character of Elvira.
Sure.
And
so did Vampira too. Vampira is the first horror host ever. She comes from the 1950s and based her character off of the Addams Family comic. So snatched away to the little, like the high heels and the very vamp. She was just more punk and beatnik than maybe Elvira was.
Yeah,
but
that's what I was thinking. I'm like, but it just amazes me that you don't think of these things until they're pointed out like that. Because I would have never even imagined, because I remember Elvira starting to push with the beer industry in the 90s, but it's not something that just pops into my head saying, oh, that's when Halloween started gearing up again.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, party.
Yeah,
trendy.
that's true.
It's trendy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your Gwen.
I was about to bring up the same thing. It's kind of leading from horror host to horror host.
Yeah. Gwen. Pronounce it for me. I know Svengoolie, but it's like
Svengoolie and then Gwengoolie.
Yeah. Gwengoolie, that's right. I don't know why I can't get that. It's like stuck in my head. But anyway, so I was reading the Chicago Times article back from December that we're interviewing for you guys. And so tell us a little bit about the audition process and how wonderful it is to actually work on such an iconic, and it's long lasting. So
boy, is it.
So give us some of that good stuff right there.
Yeah. So I think my weird goal in life was always to be a horror host. But unfortunately, it really isn't a thing anymore. So that's why I think I focused on YouTube, because that's the most like public access television show that we have today.
Yeah.
It's like the modern way of it. So that's why I kind of put everything on that. And my friend, during Halloween Horror Nights, I was in charge of Killer Clowns from Outer Space, The Maze.
Cool.
Those were my boys. And I remember I got a text message from my friend, and he was like, have you seen this audition? I think you should go. And and lo and behold, there it was, the Svengoolie auditions that were open call. And I have a really funny story about that because I was working horror nights, so I don't get home till about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh.
And it was already October. And I was like, well, how long has have these auditions been up? Like, did I miss it? When's the deadline? So I couldn't find anything anywhere on the website of like when the deadline was. So I was kind of panicking. So I remember in the middle of the night, I sent an email, and I sent an email to every email that I could find connected to that site. Little did I know I was actually sending an email to Rich Cause, Svengoolie himself, like his personal email.
Oh, wow.
I remember I was like, hi, my name is Sarah Palmer. I would like to audition for the Spawn of Svengoolie. I can't seem to find the deadline, no pun intended. But if you could let me know, that'd be great. And thinking nothing of it, all of a sudden I have a ping on my email, like about 15 minutes later. And it's Sven. He actually replied on his own email. And I screenshot it because I have it to this day. Because I'm like, if I get this job, I'm going to use this against him later. Out of all the things he could have said to me, maybe to help me with his own audition process or whatever, he literally just replied, "No idea, period." Thank you, Sven.
Oh, that is hilarious.
So I screenshot, I go, I remember this. I remember the great advice you gave me.
Yes.
So a few months later, I sent in a tape. I sent it as myself. So I had no name, no character name. It was just Sarah Palmer or Pinup Palmer. I'm not quite sure yet. And I think I was a vampire is what I originally did. Got the call, I would say like 6 rounds in. There was 6 rounds of auditions, which means calls plus writing testing. They wanted to test us on writing and comedy writing. Or write a sketch for Sven, then write a whole episode. Choose any movie that you want, write about it. Mine was Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Cool.
Did like FaceTime auditions too, so like acting out the entire thing in front of them, and then eventually getting the call for them to fly me out to Chicago to audition in the space, which was very nerve-wracking. I'd never been to Chicago, and here I was. And I still didn't have a name or anything. I was just, I think, Gwen or something, or no, sorry, just Sarah. And I actually show up. There was 3 people, I think, every day that month. So 3 different groups coming in and being on the set. And they came in with their own stuff that they wrote. So whatever they gave us. And I actually happened to be on the same day that Scott Ryder is there, who is now Imp on the show. He's my partner in crime. And out of like it was so weird that we both got casted in this, and we were both on the same day, to the point where I remember after I auditioned, they were going through everybody else. They sent the other girl home that day, and they're like, "Hey, Sarah, can you just hang around for a little bit?" I was like, "Sure." And they put Scott and I together on the set, and they're like, "You guys, we just want to see something with you two. You guys both snuck into Sven's set. Go." And they just had the cameras on us, and we had to come up with an improv real quick of us sneaking on a set. And I think it was that moment where I started kind of realizing there might be more than one Spawn. And I was like, oh, I think they put this together. That's interesting. Okay. So I thought I was done. No, not yet. I have to call in another round. And it was apparently I was like, so I have to go back to Chicago for the final audition. And this is when I showed up in kind of the Gwengoolie outfit that you see. I was like, where I changed myself. I started paling myself out. I had a wig, everything. And I showed up, but it still wasn't called Gwengoolie. I think, I forget what my original name was, but it wasn't that. Because they came up with that name. I did not.
Okay.
Yeah, there were a couple names that they were circulating around, but yeah, I didn't. And that time they gave us 2 movies to pick from, and mine was Kolchak, the Night Stalker, that they gave me. And I had to write for not only me, but to write a bit for Sven and I. And I was like, you know what, let's take a risk. Let's make a song. And I've never rehearsed this song with Sven. I never met Rich Cause. And this, all of a sudden, here we are. him and I have a song that we're singing together. I show up on set, I say hello to him, and cameras are rolling and go. You're about to sing. Yeah, it was very like, hope this works out, you know. And eventually I got the call that we got it. And I was like, cool. And they're like, by the way, we're airing that episode. What do you mean? You're airing
wow.
Well, we're airing your last audition, we're airing it. And I was like, okay, so good to know, I guess. And so that's why the first time anybody ever saw Gwen Gully, I think at that point I had the name. It was my actually audition. So if I was nervous and stiff and scared and me singing with Sven, that was my audition. And it was like a one and done. And that was it. And they aired it.
Well, and they obviously felt it was good enough to be aired. So that's cool.
I guess. But the problem is, I thought, you know, once you get hired, there'll be like a nice meeting. And you get to be like, hey, let's discuss your character, or maybe what we want you to do, or how you're going to, what's your look? Here's your official name. Now, that never happened. So whatever I showed up with on that day, that outfit, that look, that's what I was. And now I'm stuck in this outfit. And I'm going, okay. And these gloves are getting more ill-fitted as time goes on, because they were just supposed to be a one and done type thing. I didn't think it. And now every time people see me with the old gloves, they just make fun of my old gloves. They're like, is she washing dishes?
Yes.
Or something?
Yes.
And
I've seen the comments.
Like a trend to hate on my gloves, but now it's an ongoing joke that my old gloves are haunting Gwen. So they'll arrive in like different shots and they'll like beat people up, and they have like, they're almost like, have a mind of their own now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are they like the equivalent of the rubber chickens that get, you know,
they're equivalent to Thing in the Addams Family.
Okay.
Yes.
That'd
be cool.
They're like twins. They work together, high five each other, and they go away. And it's become a thing. But that hasn't really been seen yet. That's the stuff we've been working on the scenes.
Gotcha.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah. So that it was a long process, but it was well worth it. And we're still figuring out our characters too. And we only see Sven or Rich Cause when we film, you know, and that's there's never been like a sit down convo with him. It's just like very
Oh wow. And so now, do you do some of your own writing for your character?
Yeah, we have done a couple skits that are our own writing, but we have been, how do I describe this? There is other stuff we've been doing on the side that has not aired yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
That will be aired. But our cast is mostly focused on that. And I would just say stay tuned for October. And
awesome. Okay.
That's when everything we've been working on, I think, will come into light. A lot of things. And then the next day we film with Sven. And sometimes he just writes a script for us and he goes, that's what you're saying today. And we're like, okay. And that's what people have been seeing. So like we'll pop in on like random movies of his, say a couple of lines on the teleprompter, and then go away. And that's all it's been so far. Okay.
So it's evolving.
Slowly evolving, but nothing that we've truly worked on yet has been seen yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I will be anxious to see that. My husband and I, some Saturday nights, do sit down and watch it. We call it, live. And then occasionally, other than that, we'll record it and then just watch it on a given night. And just,
Same with my parents. Yeah. They're in Tennessee. They got things to do.
Yeah.
Well, and it also depends upon what's being shown that night.
Yes,
I guess that's why I tune in, because sometimes some of his movie selections are like, no, I'm just not in the mood.
Oh, and the fans make it very known that they do not want to watch, the trilogy of terror for the 5th time in a row.
Yeah. Somebody gets a little redundant and little, it's like, I really don't want to see it, but okay. Doesn't mean I stop wanting to, because I always tune in to see what's coming next. And I think that's one of the things that has kept Svengoolie so cult classic over the years is that the fan base is like, oh yeah, may not want to watch it now, but I know it's going to be there when I do want to watch it. So
yeah, he keeps the old classics alive and going, and that's what, like, he has access to some more like not modern, but I want to say like more 1980s horror films.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I know Rich is very particular on what movies he wants to show.
Yes.
He may not like Friday the 13th, like, let's say, if we have access to that. He would prefer doing Saturday the 14th than Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
That's just style. And he tries to change it up every now and then, but certain contracts, when it comes to the movies, have to be shown in a certain period of time. So let's say Trilogy of Terror, their contract is, okay, yeah, you can have Trilogy of Terror for this amount of money, but you have to show it within a 6-month period twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why you're like, we just saw this. They have to contractually.
Okay.
So
yeah, I can understand that. I mean, that's just business end of it. So you have to make do with those types of things. Yeah, got to work it. You got to work it.
And that's why I think we come in and, those in-between bits that Sven has, we come in and we start to change it up a little bit. So it's like a different thing that you haven't seen before. So it depends on if people like us or if they don't like us. You can definitely hear the groans and moans and stuff if we show up or if we don't, or who is it. And it's fascinating seeing the fan base either accept, grow, kind of start to get to like, or just plain write us off. It's scary. It's a weird, we're changing the game a little bit, but we're still going to keep the original core of it there. We don't ever want to get
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the fan base I can understand might have a little problem with some changing, especially as long as Svengoolie has been around.
Oh yeah.
If I am correct, 1979 Rich Cause showed up. And that, mind you, he is the son of Svengoolie. There was even a Svengoolie, Jerry G. Bishop, before him.
Yeah.
Which he was in even earlier. So yeah, since 1979, he has been on the air. I mean, yeah, he's been fired from different local networks and stuff like that, but he's the longest running, I think, horror host actively working. I would say him and Joe Bob Briggs right now are like the last OGs, still working, still on the air. Two different styles, but Joe Bob is way more adult, and I think he's a little bit more family oriented for Svengoolie over here.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, and I really like the Spawn edition. I think you guys bring a new element to the show, and I just, we always, my husband and I, when we're watching, it's like, who's going to show up tonight? When we're watching it. So it's just kind of, it's fun to not really know who is going to show up and interact. So
yeah, it's like a trade every time. Sometimes it's all of us. It depends on what Rich wants. Like I said, those skits aren't really our control. It's like we come in and either Jim or Rich writes it, and we get it literally the day before sometimes while we're there in Chicago and when I fly. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm saying until I walk on that screen and go, what am I doing? Oh, this is a movie. Okay. And so if it looks like we're reading a teleprompter, it's because we are.
Yeah.
It's hard, especially when there's all of us on screen and I'm supposed to be looking at somebody, but I can't because I don't know what my next line is.
Right.
So I'm trying to read it. It gets complicated, but they work like that. They have a system put in place. Jim and Rich they like to keep things going. They don't like it either when you mess up, because if you mess up, we got to start all the way at the beginning again.
Right. Right.
You can see Rich start to get a little uncomfortable.
Well, I know Jeannie and I were talking before you came on tonight, and about like the whole rubber chickens. And I think, Jeannie, didn't you read that somebody had been gifted chickens or rubber chickens or something?
The guy that plays Imp.
Yeah.
He said that in the article that I was telling you from the Chicago Times, he told the reporter that his friends gifted him 5 rubber chickens when he got cast as Imp. So,
probably.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just kind of cool to think about rubber chickens, because that's one of my favorites. My friend gifted me a rubber chicken years ago and it was used because of an article for Road Rage. You know,
Oh,
if you ever have a
gosh.
problem of road rage, you keep a rubber chicken in your car, and then if somebody gives you a problem, grab that chicken and you shake it at them. And then it
My
makes them
word.
stop because they're trying to decide whether what in the world is this person shaking a rubber chicken at me or what?
Don't be alone at that point.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. So when I read that, I was like, oh, that's just too cool. I love it. The whole rubber chicken thing. So
It's
that's why I
been
was asking you
a
about
long
it.
time.
So do
Yeah.
You
what?
should
I'm
see
sorry.
the box of rubber chickens Rich has in the back on the set. It's
I can only
just
imagine.
all different kinds. Some that look like they've been flattened on the side of the road. They have lost all their luster.
Yeah.
And it,
But
I would
that's
not be
kind of like what
surprised
happened to
if
mine.
that happened.
That
Yeah.
Scott is a puppet maker. He's probably the weirdest one out of our entire group.
oh,
Yeah,
Well,
he's bizarre. I like
I,
him though.
yeah.
interesting. Well, kind of like even going back further, you mentioned like one of the like your best memories of Halloween was decorating your house with your mom and stuff.
Oh,
So what are the things that really brought you into the horror genre, like from early on, like that you're like, I love this, I want to see more and more of it?
And keep going with it. I guess is what she's trying to say is kind of
Yeah.
like what's keeping you in this other than, you talked about how you have YouTube about
mhm.
Pinup Palmer and you like bringing that into play. And I think I've even read some places where people have called you the Instagram influencer when it comes to that type of genre. And you've talked about how crossing it over with the pink. And I get it. Every time I've seen any of your YouTube or Instagram or everything, I keep coming up with this Betty Boop, Jessica Rabbit, and all this rolled into an Elvira. And so
Yeah.
it's wonderful to me. So, what's keeping you on the track and what do you have for for future horror coming up?
A lot of things. I'll tell you that. But
Woohoo!
I I don't know what attracts me to it so much. I don't know if it's the feeling I get. I'll tell you this though. I love comedy more than most people. Like
Mhm.
I love to laugh. I love to laugh. I love to be
Yeah.
surrounded by laughter. And I don't know about you guys, but I've heard this said a lot of times before. Have you ever gone to a horror film, like at a movie theater?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I always said it's the only ones I go to a movie theater for is horror films because I think you get more bang for your buck. And this is what I mean
Mhm.
by that.
Mhm.
Every time you get scared or you hear the audience gasp and when there's a jump scare, the next thing
Yeah.
right after the scare is a laugh.
Oh,
Everybody laughs
Yeah.
because it's that relief of like, oh my gosh. And there's just something about that where I don't know if it's like an adrenaline kick or something, but I've always been addicted to that. And I've always been addicted to comedy and horror put together. I have to blame Mel Brooks for a lot of this when it comes to
absolutely.
Frankenstein or High Anxiety,
Oh yeah.
or Brothers, when it comes to certain horror films and student bodies that put these two things together. I don't know. I never want to see it die because it was just such a time where camp was just, it was just a way to make people feel good and feel
Yeah.
funny and laugh. And I feel like we lost that over time where it's just gotten too serious. And I
Mhm.
think that's why with my YouTube videos, I'm always trying to make people laugh, even if I'm just doing a hair tutorial. There's
Yeah.
something stupid happening in the background that has no business being there. Why is a bat on strings and a hair tutorial? I don't know because I want it to be. And
Yeah.
uh, it's very horror hosty. It's the
Yeah.
like worse it is, the better it is. So I just try to keep comedy in my life, and comedy just happens to be horror in that
Yeah.
sense. And I think that's what keeps me going. It makes me laugh. And there's so much more to explore because there's different, engineers and whatever or
Mhm.
genres. Yeah. And what's coming next is I wish I could tell you. I wish I could.
Yeah.
But like I said, around September, you'll start to hear some rumblings on, I
Okay.
would say, the MeTV network. There's
Okay.
things shifting. So that's something to look forward to September, October.
Mhm.
Uh, being an everybody that knows me knows that I can't spell for the life of me, but here I am writing to be an author for something horror that is coming out that you can own.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so that's a first. I never saw that one coming when I was a kid, when you would write it in your yearbook what you're going to do. But something I definitely want to tackle. And I got a couple YouTube things and a reboot of my my horror podcast. So I love horror podcasts. I like talking to people who like horror stuff too.
Yeah.
And we're revamp of it this summer, and then we're promoting it at Midsummer Scream.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So we'll be there, and I'll be there signing stuff or whatever. If anybody who just wants to come up and say hi. So
cool.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But if I had a dream, it would be to create something completely original. And I've been looking at having like a Halloween record.
Oh,
so
neat.
Like Bobby Bort and the Pinkett Smiths, like the Monster Mash type music.
Yeah.
Zachary, the horror host back in the day, used to have a whole album all dedicated to like horror music, and he would sing and do funny things. So I was like, I think I want to do something like that, where it's like a song, at least one of them have at least be a decent hit to play around Halloween time, that everybody knows, oh, it's this one, like to put in your Halloween records or whatever. So that's something.
Or your playlist. Yeah. Cause I kind of borrowed people's on Spotify, and then I was like, I'm going to put my own together and pull the songs I really like. And so, that would be amazing.
Yeah. That's what I've been kind of aiming for. And I want it to feel like those old 1950s, like, old thunder sounds and
nice. Oh, very cool
music. So very vintage still, but horror. So I want to follow like Zacherle's steps. Zacherle, the horror host, is the one that I've been watching heavily and watching his career and how he did it.
Yeah.
And I want to follow kind of more in his footsteps. I just love being a horror host, and I love that I get to be on a platform that still exists.
Yeah.
I got lucky because there isn't any.
Well, I want to go back to what you were saying about comedy and horror, and our podcast is based on Edgar Allan Poe, and the 6 Degrees are his influence on pretty much everything in so many different genres people don't even realize besides horror. And when he wrote many of his horror short stories, really all of them, Jeannie, wouldn't you say, they all have this dark humor, thrown in here and there, like, in the Cask of Amontillado, when he's like, you're not going to die of a cold, when, Fortunato is leading, or Montresor's leading Fortunato down to the cellar to wall him up, and things like that. And so, with what you were saying with, the horror, the jump scare, and then that laugh afterwards, I mean, that to me, has some influence from how Poe started out with, that's what the people wanted. That's why he wrote the horror. And so it just, I don't know, that really kind of resonated with me, what you said.
They always, just like glamour girls and vintage and horror, they mesh well together too. Comedy and horror always kind of been side by side.
Yep.
And never taken seriously too. You could see it in the Academy Awards. Why are these two things not up there? Because they're in the same weekend. Yeah. And I think that's maybe why people like Freddy Krueger, because here he is, the sinister, scary thing. And as each movie continues on, he gets funnier. He's wearing wigs. He's getting more ridiculous. And I don't know, people just became to love him as like almost a lovable character, a child murderer as a lovable character. How did that happen?
He's the anti-hero. He's definitely the anti-hero. Yeah.
Yeah, all of a sudden you're rooting for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Just like what you were talking about with music, like the horror type music, the first thing that popped into my head when you were talking was the Freddy Krueger nursery thing. One, two, Freddy's coming for you. 3. And I was thinking that's perfect, because that's from my day. I won't say childhood,
Jeannie,
but that's from my day.
Old. We're a decade older than you.
Sarah. You come from the best kind, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And so that's the thing. And that's why I have a real hard time with some people that mark horror on some of their movies, because I go, that's not horror. You know, that doesn't fit with horror. I mean, all you're doing is just causing nothing but, you know, bloodshed and you seeing how much gore.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a difference between gore and horror.
Yeah.
And you know, that's the thin line that people have to walk. And that's one of the things I think that's kept Svengoolie so stationary with the types of movies that even if he does repeat them so many times and has to, it's the choices of those movies, because like you said, they fit a place in our hearts that make it horror to us, not gore, but horror, an actual horror comedy relief type thing that you got to have that. And you know, and that's why
it was great. But I think that's also the change that's kind of happening now when they're starting to look at us, the Sven Squad. And because like back in the 50s, Psycho came out, right? Or 1960s, 1950s.
Yeah.
Scary, the scariest thing ever. But if you move all of a sudden to the 1970s, Psycho looks like nothing, especially when Exorcist came out. Exorcist, everybody was people throwing up.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now Exorcist, if I showed somebody Exorcist today, they'd be like, is this scary? And you're like, it was. Like, it's huge for these. Back then, this was disturbing. Like, and I could still see some disturbing parts. So now with the Sven Squad, it's like, well, what kind of movies do we show? Like, what, you know, to people in the early 1970s or late 1970s when the first Friday the 13th came out, I mean, it's just a killer mother.
Yeah.
But now, is it camp? Is it camp? Pun intended with the camp. It's like, consider that. You know, is it the same now as maybe the classic monsters? Because we look at all the B films from the 1960s and 50s and just laugh at them. That's what makes them great. Now we're starting to reach a point where almost it's catching up to the 1970s and 80s as the new bracket of making fun of these films. Because if you do look back, Killer Clowns is ridiculous. It is absolutely. So it's starting to shift and move again because horror are getting a little bit more crazier as time goes on. Something happened in the late 90s, early 2000s. I blame Saw, I blame Texas Chainsaw, and I even blame Hellraiser to start to amp up the blood and gore. And everybody's trying to top and level up with each other. It became like, what can we disturb you with the most?
I agree with you.
And now it's shifting again too. Yeah, but it's so used to think was scary maybe to us of going, do we show it? Like, is it funny? Can we make fun of it? Yeah. It's crazy. Times are changing.
It really is. Well, one question we always ask all of our guests is where did you first meet Edgar Allan Poe? Was it in middle school, high school? Like, where did you maybe read your first?
I don't remember anything in school. Nothing.
Okay.
Because that's not where I learned things. I learned everything from the TV.
Okay.
And you're going to laugh at this, but the first time I ever got introduced into kind of an Edgar Allan Poe world was, I have to blame Simpsons trilogy of Treehouse of Terrors.
Yes. The first one.
Episode.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first, I would say, tidbit of kind of going, is this a poem? What is this? You know, and figuring out, in class you learned things, but I would say that was the first thing.
Okay.
And really though, in I would say early freshman year of high school or even end of middle school, there's a place called Not Scary Farm.
Yes.
Which is a theme park here. And they have, just like Universal Studios Halloween Horror Nights, it's their horror event. They're the OG ones that created the first haunt era, used to do her shows here. This is the place. And one year they actually had an Edgar Allan Poe maze. And it was dedicated to all his writings, all his books, the pendulum, the pendulum. And they had, so every room, it was dedicated to a murderer that was inspired by Edgar Allan Poe's song or poems or writings.
Yeah.
So every room it was a different kill dedicated. So the murderer is like, oh, he's reading you the stories as you're going through the maze and watching people get sliced by the pendulum or
that's cool.
The crows everywhere. That was another thing that strictly remember in my
Oh, that's neat.
Simpsons. Once again, cartoons. With those
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
But I will say the Simpsons version of
Simpsons.
the Raven is very cool. Like they did an excellent job with it. They really did.
Yeah. And that's one of
They
the things that connect our
with
podcast.
it. Yeah, they did the actual.
Yeah. And that's why we like to do our podcast, because even though Edgar Allan Poe is 214 years ago, he's still very much a part of it. The Simpsons and people get introduced to him different ways. That we even brought up how he's in comics like Batman
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff. So it's good to hear that. Hey, it's not that people get introduced to Poe in school, like you said. You know, not a lot of people remember school that far back anyway. And so, hey, it's good to know that, hey, our influences that we're covering are showing that that's how people are getting the Poe influence anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah. I think even when we were talking about like Hobby Lobby and Joann's and stuff, didn't they have like a whole Edgar Allan Poe theme one year?
Yes,
yeah.
Michael's has been doing that for the past 2 years, and I'm hoping they'll continue that with some of their merchandise here for this year.
Victorian macabre kind of. I remember a statue of him.
Yes, yes. It was really cool. And in fact, I was going to order it and they were sold out before like the day they came out.
Yeah,
And
it's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think I need to find a picture of my dad during Halloween. I believe he dressed up as Edgar Allan Poe and then decorated his entire cubicle with like the crows everywhere and stuff. I have to find the picture.
Oh,
It happened
nice.
like 5 years ago. It's why he did it, I don't know. Like he reads poems, you know, but he decided to do it anyway. I don't know.
Oh,
My
that's
dad's
cool.
yeah.
That is really cool. Well,
Never know.
and I think June 15th, Svengoolie showing Pit and the Pendulum by Poe. And so, and I think you said that you're going to be on that episode.
I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Gwen,
Awesome.
the reason how he's been writing Gwen lately is a little bit kind of like since she is from Hollywood and she's buried amongst the stars at Hollywood forever. Kind of like a celebrity wants to know everybody's business, almost kind of like Lucy, you know,
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
get in the show, can I get a part of this, can I meet this celebrity?
Yeah.
And so she's kind of dumb, so when she hears Pit and Pendulum, she thinks he's talking about Brad Pitt. And where is it?
That's great.
That's kind of the direction. And sad news for Gwen later when she finds out it's not what she thinks it is.
Yes.
But
Well,
oh, yeah. Yeah. A
Poor
pit full of
Gwen.
rats is definitely not Brad.
yeah,
No.
it's not. She doesn't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. This has been amazing. This has been awesome. And we look forward to what you have in store for your new rebranded, I should say, podcast and Gwengooglie's future and everything else you do.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Are you going to be on Spike's Breezeway Cocktail Hour anytime soon?
We text each other as the show is going because
Mhm.
you know my whole thing is I give him crap all the time. I really do.
Yes.
And that's our dynamic.
And
That's
it's
how we
great
do it.
on the episodes.
Frenemies. But there's a couple exciting things in store for him that I know that I'm not going to mention.
Yeah.
That I may have some involvement with, but
Okay.
will I be on? He always acts like I live so far away, and he gives me crap all the time for not being on a show. I was like, you're supposed to ask me. It's not me just going, I'm going to show up to your house.
Yes.
Even though I've already stated that I've hidden in the background somewhere or like in his garage shackled up.
Oh, yes.
I like to make things complicated for him. But I would say soon when he probably gets back from the Hukilau.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I keep telling him, I was like, we need to do a Creature of the Black Lagoon one or something, or let's do Gilligan's Island theme. Like, let's all dress up, get Biff.
That would be amazing. That would be so much fun.
it's just like pulling teeth because he's so busy now because this is his job. This is his life.
I know. And we were so excited for him for that. So
it's really cool to watch him grow. Very proud of him.
Yes, absolutely. Jeannie, do you have anything else before we end?
Nope, everything is good for me.
All right. Well, Sarah, thank you
Sarah.
again. And Jeannie, we are
Ho
out.